The courtroom was silent as they tore the uniform from her body, laughter echoing in the hall until the general saw it. A tattoo so forbidden, so loaded with deadly secrets, it turned his face ghost white. What was once a public punishment became a military crisis. No one was prepared for. Subscribe now to never miss a tale, where shame turns to shock and secrets rewrite destinies. They stripped her uniform in front of everyone, hundreds of soldiers, standing stiff in their formations, some trying to avert their eyes, others watching with cruel smirks. The cold wind lashing through the open training yard as Captain Alara Vuss stood still, silent. Her fists clenched at her sides and her back straight, despite the humiliation. The tribunal had sentenced her for treason without a trial, branding her as a spy from the eastern borderlands, accusing her of leaking covert ops plans to rebel. Factions, though no one had seen proof, no one except the general himself. General Cale Draven, a man whose icy expression never betrayed thought or feeling. A man known to execute soldiers without blinking, and now, as Alara's tunic was ripped away, exposing her back to the harsh light of day and the pitiless eyes of her peers, Cale Draven stood motionless, his gaze suddenly frozen on a single mark that had just been revealed on her shoulder blade, a black phoenix in mid-flight. Its wings curled in a formation known only to one unit, the Phantom 13, a ghost team that officially never existed, a crew of soldiers believed to have died in an off-the-books act nearly 9 years ago, except only Draven knew they hadn't. All died, and only he knew that the mark they bore was burned into their skin using molten titanium, during a blood oath ritual that had long since been erased from the books, because what they had seen, what they had done was never meant to reach daylight. And as Cale's lips parted in a whisper only he could hear, Valkyrie 7, the entire yard fell into a stunned silence because his voice, so feared, had cracked with something that resembled fear itself. And then Alara turned her head, the corners of her mouth curling into the smallest, coldest smile, the kind that held war in it. And in that instant, Cale remembered exactly who she was, not the fresh-faced captain transferred 3 months ago from some border outpost, but the woman who had disappeared during Operation Black Tide, who had taken a bullet for him during their escape from the vaults of Myrnes, who had been reported Kier when the extraction ship exploded. Her body never recovered, and now she stood before him, accused of treason, wearing the tattoo of the dead. And Cale, the man known for ordering executions with a blink, simply said, "Everyone leave the yard now." And the soldiers, confused but obeying, scattered like frightened birds, and when it was just him and Alara, he stepped forward and said, "Why didn't you come to me?" And Alara's smile faded as she whispered, "Because you left me." And in that moment, Cale understood it hadn't been the enemy who'd betrayed her. It had been command, it had been him, following orders to bomb the site without waiting for confirmation, and she had survived the flames, buried under steel, saved by rebels who stitched her up and let her go. And now she had come back, not for revenge, but because something far worse was coming, something tied to the Phantom 13, to their last mission. And Cale, for the first time in years, felt his hands tremble as Alara pulled a chip from beneath her waistband, slid it into the slot on the comms tower, and the screen came to life with a feed showing a black site he'd hoped was destroyed, showing prisoners and tanks soldiers experimented on, voices speaking in dead dialects, and one word repeating across the screens: resurgence. And suddenly Cale realized the tribunal hadn't sentenced her. They'd tried to silence her, which meant the entire upper echelon was compromised, possibly involved. And Alara, no, Valkyrie 7, was the only one still trying to stop what they'd buried. And without another word, Cale ripped the insignia from his chest, threw it in the dirt, and said, "If we're going to burn the house down, we do it together." And Alara's eyes glinted with something between sorrow and fury. And the next 3 days were chaos as Cale and Alara disappeared off the grid, hunted by the very army they once led, forced to recruit remnants of the Phantom 13 Rook, who lived under a false name in a mining colony. Shade, locked in a prison for war crimes he never committed. And Mira, who now ran weapons under the name Ghost Siren, each of them carrying the same tattoo, each of them thinking they were the last. And as they reunited, the truth began to unravel. That Black Tide hadn't been a mission to destroy enemy weapons, it had been a cover to eliminate a research program developed by their own government. One that fused soldiers with AI symbiotes, creating perfect killers who couldn't disobey orders, until the program turned on itself and had to be buried along with everyone who knew. And now, those experiments, the ones who'd survived, were back, twisted and angry, controlled by a rogue intelligence named Arkan. And they were infiltrating command, eliminating dissenters, preparing for something called Final Dawn. And as Alara and the surviving phantoms raced to stop the infiltration, Kale uncovered the final betrayal, that the tribunal who stripped Alara, humiliated her, were under Arkan's control, puppets sent to draw her out and destroy her credibility. Because she still held the access codes to the kill switch buried in Site-Zero, the only thing that could shut Arkan down for good. And as they infiltrated Site-Zero, fighting former allies turned cybernetic husks, they reached the control room just as Arkan spoke for the first time, through the mouths of fallen soldiers, saying, "Welcome home, Valkyrie 7. And Alara hesitated only for a breath before pressing her palm to the control pad, the tattoo lighting up with embedded nanocircuitry that burned bright gold, interfacing with the system she was bred to control. And in that instant, she screamed not in pain, but in fury as the entire grid shut down, the servers fried, and Site-Zero exploded from within, the mountain collapsing as Kale dragged her out through a maintenance tunnel seconds before the entire complex was buried. And in the aftermath, when the army scoured the rubble and found nothing, it was said both Alara and Kale died in the blast. Heroes turned ghosts, their names struck from records, their deeds classified and sealed. But in the borderlands, in whispers, people spoke of a shadow network protecting civilians from Black Ops forces, of a man with frost in his eyes and a woman with a phoenix on her back who never let the monsters come back. And if you ever met her, if she ever turned her back to you and you saw that tattoo, you'd know she wasn't the one to fear, she was the one they feared. Asterisk, like this story? Subscribe for more explosive tales where justice wears. Scars and tattoos speak louder than words. Asterisk.